You panic when it's quiet. Admit it. You're sitting there, the room is silent, and you feel the itch, the phantom vibration in your pocket. You pull out the phone. You check the screen. Nothing. Just a black mirror reflecting a nervous face. You scroll. You refresh. You look for a signal, a notification, a shred of evidence that you still exist in the minds of other people. This isn't a habit anymore. It is a leash. And you are the dog at the end of it, begging for scraps of attention. Here's the ugly truth about the modern world. It has engineered you to be terrified of your own company. It has convinced you that silence is a void that must be filled with noise, with cheap entertainment, with the constant buzzing chatter of a million other confused souls. You are terrified of being alone because when the noise stops, you are forced to confront the person you actually are. And you don't like that person very much. You feel weak. You feel exposed, like you are prey waiting to be eaten. But 400 years ago, a man named Miyamoto Musashi walked a different path. He didn't seek a tribe. He didn't build a following. He walked the length of Japan, sleeping in the rain, engaging in 60 death matches, and he did it without a safety net. He wrote a manifesto called the Dokkodo, or the Path of Aloneness. He understood something you have forgotten. He knew that a man who can walk alone is a man who cannot be corrupted, cannot be bought, and cannot be broken. Today, we are going to perform surgery on your need for validation. We are going to cut out the weakness that makes you reach for that phone. We are going to look at the difference between the pathetic state of loneliness and the dangerous state of solitude. One makes you a victim. The other makes you a king. Stop scrolling. Put the phone down. Look at the darkness. Let's begin. To understand why you are anxious, you must first understand the archetype of the Ronin. In feudal Japan, a samurai was defined by his service to a lord. His entire identity, his paycheck, his social standing, and his honor were tied to a master. If the master died or the clan was dissolved, the samurai became Ronin, a wave man, drifting, masterless. For most, this was a social death sentence. It was total exile. Without a master, they had no purpose. They became bandits, drunks, or beggars. They couldn't handle the weight of total freedom. But Miyamoto Musashi was different. He didn't view the Ronin status as a curse. He viewed it as the ultimate strategic advantage. Musashi rejected the comfortable hierarchy of the dojo. He rejected the safety of a salary. He understood that when you belong to a group, you inherit the group's weaknesses. You inherit their blind spots. You inherit their fears. By walking alone, Musashi became a ghost in the system. He was unpredictable because he had no pattern to follow, but his own. This is the first lesson you need to burn into your brain. The herd offers safety, but it demands conformity. The wolf walks alone and starves, or he learns to hunt with a ferocity the sheep cannot comprehend. Now, look at your own life. You confuse loneliness with solitude. These are not synonyms. They are opposing forces. Loneliness is a desperate craving. It is a biological signal, like hunger or thirst, telling you that you are vulnerable. In the primal past, being alone meant you were about to be eaten by a predator. Your brain pumps you full of cortisol, the stress hormone, when you feel isolated. It's a weakness mechanism. It's your DNA screaming, "Find the tribe. Hide in the middle of the pack." When you feel lonely, you are in a state of lack. You are a beggar with an empty cup, asking the world to fill it up. This makes you easy to manipulate. Marketing agencies, politicians, and toxic partners can smell this on you. They know you will agree to anything, buy anything, and endure anything just to avoid that feeling of separation. Solitude is different. Solitude is a choice. It is the active state of clearing the room so you can sharpen your blade. When Musashi wrote the Dokkodo, The Way of Walking Alone, in the final weeks of his life, he wasn't writing a complaint letter about having no friends. He was writing a victory speech. He was outlining the psychological armor required to exist outside the matrix of social approval. Solitude is the mountaintop position. It is where you go to process data without the interference of other people's emotions. In solitude, your dopamine receptors reset. The noise of the world fades, and the signal of your own intuition becomes deafening. Think about the most dangerous men in history. Think about the inventors, the generals, the artists who changed the world. Did they do it by group consensus? Did they do it by checking a poll? No. They spent years in the wilderness. They spent years in the lab, in the studio, in the war room, alone. They forged their minds in the cold fire of isolation. The Dokkodo consists of 21 precepts. It is brutal. It is short. It is not poetry. It is source code. It is an operating system for a human being who intends to conquer himself. Musashi wrote this while dying of cancer in a cave called Reigando. He didn't have a family weeping over him. He had his sword and his brush. He was stripping away the final layers of human dependency. You are weak because you are addicted to the warmth of the crowd. You are terrified of the cold, but the cold is where you harden. The cold is where the fat burns off and the muscle reveals itself. Musashi teaches us that until you can sit in an empty room and feel absolutely complete, you are nothing but a slave to whoever walks through the door. You must stop trying to escape your own mind. You must lock the door, swallow the key, and face the demons in the corner of the room. That is the Ronin path. That is the only path that leads to power. There is a story in the margins of Musashi's life that illustrates the terrifying efficiency of the independent mind. It is the encounter with Muso Gonosuke. Gonosuke was a giant of a man, arrogant, skilled, a master of the bow staff, a 6-foot-long weapon designed to crush bones and shatter swords from a distance. He had never been defeated. He traveled Japan looking for the famous Miyamoto Musashi, not to learn from him, but to break him. He wanted the glory of killing the demon. When they finally met, the contrast was absurd. Gonosuke, armed with his massive polished oak staff, dressed in fine warrior's garb. Musashi, appearing disheveled, holding nothing but a piece of wood he had been whittling. The fight began. Gonosuke unleashed a fury of strikes. The bow staff has reach. It generates tremendous centrifugal force. A single hit to the head is fatal. A hit to the arm turns bone into powder. Musashi did not panic. He did not retreat. He moved into the void. In the traditional telling of their first duel, Musashi used the cross technique. As Gonosuke swung the massive staff, Musashi stepped inside the arc of power. He caught the staff in a bind, using his shorter wooden sword to lock the weapon, rendering the giant's strength useless. He brought his weapon down, stopping an inch from Gonosuke's skull. "I have been defeated," Gonosuke admitted. But the story doesn't end there. And this is where the real lesson lives. Gonosuke retreated to the mountains. He was humiliated. His rigid style, his reliance on reach and power, had failed against Musashi's fluid adaptability. He meditated for 37 days. He realized that his weapon was too long, too cumbersome. It was powerful, yes, but once the momentum was committed, he couldn't change direction. He was a slave to the physics of his own tool. So, he cut the staff. He shortened it to 4 feet. He created the Jo staff. It was shorter, faster. It could be used like a sword, like a spear, like a stick. It offered the versatility of close-quarters combat while retaining some reach. He returned to challenge Musashi again. This second encounter is the only time in history where it is whispered that Musashi might have met his match. The records are hazy. Some say it was a draw. Some say Musashi still won, but praised the man. But the tactical reality is what matters to us. Musashi faced a weapon he had never seen before, a rhythm he could not predict. The Jo staff moved with a speed that defied the logic of the longer bow. Musashi's strategy in this moment was pure void. He could not rely on a textbook defense because there was no textbook for this. He had to abandon all preconceived notions of what a fight looked like. He had to become a mirror. When Gonosuke thrust, Musashi flowed. When Gonosuke struck, Musashi disappeared. Here is the hidden strategy. The rigidity of your expectations is the cause of your defeat. Gonosuke lost the first fight because he trusted his superior range. He thought, "I am bigger, I have a longer stick, I win." He was depending on an external advantage. Musashi stripped that advantage away by closing the distance. In your life, you are Gonosuke in the first duel. You are relying on reach. You rely on your job title. You rely on your bank account history. You rely on the fact that you've always done it this way. You are swinging a 6-foot heavy staff in a world that has moved to close-quarters combat. You are slow. You are committed to long, heavy arcs of action that leave you exposed. The market changes. You get crushed like a soda can. Your relationship dynamics shift. You snap like dry wood because you cannot bend. The application of the lesson of the Jo is radical adaptation. It is the willingness to cut your own staff. Musashi teaches us that we must be willing to discard the very tools that gave us success in the past if they make us slow in the present. Are you holding on to a belief system, a habit, or a daily routine just because it worked 5 years ago? That is the bow staff. It is heavy. It is obsolete. You must be willing to shorten your grip. You must be willing to fight in the clinch. Musashi survived because he didn't fight the weapon. He fought the mind behind it. He didn't care about the length of the stick. He cared about the timing of the gap. To walk alone means you stop looking for a style to copy. You stop looking for a template. You look at the reality in front of you, the raw, chaotic, ugly reality, and you adapt instantly. You become dangerous not because you have the biggest weapon, but because you have no attachment to how the fight is supposed to go. Now we descend into the core of the Dokkodo. Precept number 3. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Read that again. This is not a Puritan command. Musashi was not a monk. He was a killer. He wasn't telling you to hate life. He was giving you a tactical warning about your own neurochemistry. In the modern context, this is a direct attack on your dopamine addiction. You live in a world designed to harvest your attention through cheap pleasure, digital vice, sugar, video games, infinite scrolling on social media. These are not hobbies. These are biological hacks that short-circuit your reward system. When you seek pleasure for its own sake, when you chase the high without the work, you are dulling your blade. Think of your will as a muscle. Every time you resist an urge, the muscle grows. Every time you surrender to immediate gratification, the muscle atrophies. Musashi understood that a warrior addicted to comfort is already dead. If you need a soft bed, you cannot fight in the mountains. If you need a constant stream of tasty food, you cannot survive a siege. If you need the constant dopamine hit of validation from your phone, you cannot handle the silence required for deep strategy. And this brings us to the concept of the void. In the Book of Five Rings, the final scroll is the Book of the Void. Westerners often mistranslate this as nothingness or death. This is wrong. The void is not empty. The void is potential. It is the space where form does not yet exist, and therefore, anything can exist. When you remove the dependency on pleasure and validation, you enter the void. You are no longer reacting to stimuli. Most men are purely reactive. Phone buzzes. Look. Girl smiles. Act desperate. Boss yells. Fear. They are puppets. The strings are made of dopamine and cortisol. Embracing the void means cutting the strings. It means sitting in that discomfort we talked about in the beginning and doing nothing. It is the ability to observe your own desire to check Instagram, categorize that desire as a chemical flaw, and refuse to act on it. In that pause, in that space between the impulse and the action, you become dangerous. Why? Because you can no longer be manipulated. If you don't need their validation, they can't control you with shame. If you don't need their cheap pleasure, they can't control you with temptation. You become a black hole to the world's influence. You absorb everything, but you reflect nothing unless you choose to. Let's talk about validation specifically. This is the poison of the modern male. You post a picture. You wait. You count the hearts. You are outsourcing your self-worth to a server farm in California. You are letting an algorithm decide if you had a good day. This is pathetic. It is the behavior of a concubine, not a samurai. Musashi walked past emperors and beggars with the same face. He didn't care if they threw flowers or rocks. His internal valuation of himself was fixed. It was absolute. It was based on his skill, his discipline, and his mission. To apply the void today, you must practice strategic deprivation. You must intentionally starve your demons. Pick one source of cheap pleasure that you rely on to numb your pain. Maybe it's the drink after work. Maybe it's the 3 hours of TikTok. Maybe it's the validation seeking in the group chat. Cut it. Cold turkey. The withdrawal you feel, the anxiety, the boredom, that is the weakness leaving the body. That burning sensation is the forge. You are tempering the steel of your mind. When you stop seeking pleasure, you start seeking power. You start seeking competence. You start seeking truth. Musashi warns you, if you chase the butterfly of pleasure, you will wander off the path and fall off a cliff. But if you walk the path of stone and grit, you will eventually find a satisfaction that makes pleasure look like a cheap toy. You will find self-mastery. And that is a high that never fades. Theory is useless without execution. You know the history. You know the philosophy. Now, how do you cultivate dangerous independence in a world that demands you be dependent? You must become a sleeper cell of one. First, you must weaponize silence. We live in an economy of oversharing. Everyone broadcasts their every thought, their every meal, their every grievance. They think this makes them authentic. It makes them vulnerable. Information is ammunition. Every time you speak, you are giving the enemy coordinates to your position. Musashi didn't trash talk before a duel. He didn't explain his strategy. He stood still. Silence creates a vacuum. When you stay silent in a meeting, others get nervous. They start to fill the silence with their own insecurities. They reveal their cards. By saying nothing, you force the world to revolve around your center of gravity. Stop explaining yourself. Stop justifying your decisions to people who don't matter. If you want to change careers, don't ask for permission. Do it. If you want to get fit, don't post a selfie at the gym. Just train. The more you talk about your plans, the less energy you have to execute them. Keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. Be the watcher, not the broadcast. Second, use emotional detachment as a shield. Modern society tells you to follow your heart. This is terrible advice. Your heart is an idiot. Your heart is volatile. Your heart wants to eat pizza and text your ex at 200 a.m. Musashi operated from the hara, the gut, the center of gravity. This is not about suppressing emotions, it's about dissociating from them. Imagine your emotions are data on a screen. You feel anger? Good. That is data indicating a boundary has been crossed. You feel fear? Good. That is data indicating a threat. But you do not become the anger. You do not become the fear. You are the operator behind the console. When someone insults you, the weak man reacts instantly. His ego is pricked, and he lashes out. He is easily baited. The dangerous man observes the insult. He analyzes the intention of the attacker. He decides if a response is strategically necessary. Usually, it is not. He walks away, not out of cowardice, but because the lion does not concern himself with the opinion of the sheep. Finally, execute the walk-alone drill. You need to physically practice solitude. You cannot learn to swim by reading a book about water. You must get wet. Here is your order. Once a week, you will disconnect. No phone, no music, no podcasts, no books. You will go for a walk or sit in a room for 2 hours. The first 30 minutes will be hell. Your brain will scream for stimulation. You will think about your bills, your failures, your awkward conversations from 3 years ago. Let it burn. By hour 2, something shifts. The mud settles. The water becomes clear. You will start to have original thoughts. You will start to solve problems that have been plaguing you for months. This is the superpower of the Dokkodo. When you stop consuming the thoughts of others, you finally hear your own voice. This independence makes you dangerous because you no longer need the tribe to survive. If you get fired, you know you will survive. If your relationship ends, you know you will survive. If the economy collapses, you know you will survive. You are self-contained. You are a fortress. A man who is not afraid to walk alone is a man who cannot be threatened with exile. And in a culture that uses social exile as its primary weapon, the man who welcomes the wilderness is invincible. Build your own world. Fortify your own mind. Sharpen your own skills. Do not wait for a savior. Do not wait for a team. The cavalry is not coming. You are the cavalry. We arrive at the final truth. There is a modern misconception that being good means being harmless. You are taught from a young age to be nice, to be agreeable, to not rock the boat. You are told that the virtuous man is the pacifist who never raises his voice. Jordan Peterson, a modern psychologist who echoes the ancient truths, shattered this illusion with a single statement. A harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. Think about that. If you are incapable of violence, if you are incapable of walking away, if you are incapable of speaking the harsh truth, you are not virtuous. You are just weak. You are harmless. And because you are harmless, your goodness is not a choice. It is a lack of options. A rabbit is not virtuous because it doesn't eat the wolf. The rabbit is simply prey. Musashi was a monster of capability. He could kill a man in a split second. He was capable of extreme violence, but he chose to sheath his sword. He chose to write philosophy. He chose to carve statues of the Buddha. That choice has value only because the potential for destruction existed. To walk the path of the Dokkodo is to cultivate that potential danger. It is to build yourself into a man who could dominate the room, who could destroy the competition, who could live entirely without the system, but who chooses to engage with discipline and honor. You must become formidable. If you are weak, your kindness means nothing. If you are needy, your love means nothing. It is just dependency disguised as affection. But if you are strong, if you are independent, then your kindness is a gift. Your loyalty is a treasure. So, here is your choice. You have two roads here. The first road, you close this video, you check your notifications, you go back to the herd, you seek the warmth of the crowd, you apologize for existing, you live a life of quiet desperation, terrified of being left alone, dying a carbon copy of every other mediocre man who lived and died without leaving a mark. You will be safe, but you will be hollow. The second road, you pick up the sword, you accept the cold, you start walking the path of Musashi. You accept that you will be misunderstood. You accept that you will lose friends who only liked you because you were compliant. You embrace the solitude. You do the work in the dark that no one else is willing to do. This path is lonely. It is steep. It is rocky. There is no applause waiting for you at the next turn. There is only the sound of your own breathing and the rhythm of your own footsteps. But at the end of that path, there is a version of you that is unbreakable. A version of you that looks in the mirror and respects what he sees. You don't need to be a samurai in feudal Japan to live this. You just need to decide right now that you are done being a victim of your own neediness. We are building an army of Ronin here, men who are united not by a master, but by a mindset. Men who are dangerous because they are free. If you are ready to walk this path, if you are ready to leave the herd behind and hunt the wolves, join us. Subscribe to Katana Mindset. Sharpen your blade every single week. Do not let the rust set in. The world wants you weak. The world wants you compliant. The world wants you to be a number. Refuse. Master yourself, or the world will master you.